Saturn is turning retrograde in Aries on July 26, 2026. However, on June 27th, it is going to enter the 14th degree of Aries. This is a degree that's known to us, as we've seen many astrological events converge around it in the last 7 months, but also over the last 4 years. Today, we are going to review all of these events so that you may trace back events in your life to see how the pattern is emerging for Saturn in Aries at 14 degrees. This is likely a transformative moment for you in which you revisit topics of self-worth, personal boundaries, controlling relationships, and push back against any oppressive forces to regain autonomy in your life. This video turned out longer than I was aiming for, but shorter than yesterday's. But I hope that it helps you and you look at it as a deep dive for a thorough review of what this transit is and what to get prepared for. Hi everybody, thank you for joining me and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to talk about Saturn at 14 degrees of Aries. If you have been watching my channel over the last 6 months, you may have noticed 2 videos about this degree. I'll link them in the description. But 14 degrees of Aries is a synchronistic degree right now, and it happens to be the exact degree that Saturn is turning retrograde on July 26, 2026. So for those of you who are new to astrology, here is Saturn. This is the glyph. And in 2 days, on June 27th, Saturn will enter the 14th degree of Aries and then continue on until it reaches 14 degrees 45 minutes in July and then retrogrades back and then forward again later sometime. But I want to take a look at this degree because it's super important in context of other transits that have happened since 2022. So if you're new to astrology, don't worry about it. You want to get your calendar out because we're going to look at patterns and synchronicities at this degree. Saturn turning retrograde at 14 degrees of Aries activates those previous transits that have been happening since 2022. And today we are doing a collective message. I know you guys want an all sign and they are coming, but I'm just working my way back from being away. Today we're going to do a collective message about what this means for all of us. We're going to study all of the other transits that are relevant at this degree. And at the end, I'm going to do a tarot card session to look deeper at what Saturn retrograde may mean for us. And since many of you guys like the channeling messages, we're going to use the channeling style here as well. One thing before we continue, the last video was really long and that's my mistake. I'm just learning how to put this together so it's comprehensive, but I am very detail oriented, as you guys know, and that leads to very specific, very detail focused attention. So at the end of that video, I mentioned some kind of a special offer that I hope that you guys are interested in. Recently, one of my videos on this channel had become age restricted because the art in the card showed a partial figure of a woman. And because of strict advertising standards, I don't think those are okay anymore. So in order to protect the channel, I've demonetized all of the old videos, which is okay because a lot of them are time specific. They don't matter anymore. I also started a tarot only channel called Tarot Talk. I've actually had it since 2016, but it was just an overflow channel for many years where we posted random specialties. Anyway, so I've dedicated Tarot Talk to just tarot readings, and I hope you check that out. It's linked in the description, but that channel's not monetized right now until I get enough hours. So I have this offer in which you guys can buy a tarot card deck for me to compensate for all the decks that I've had to remove from my channel. And in return, you can send me an email to the email provided down below and make a list of suggestions for general readings. I think I mentioned 10. So when you buy the deck from my Amazon wishlist or from my Etsy wishlist, you can send me an email with your suggestions, and I'll pick out the one or the ones that I think are best for the collective message. They can't be personal readings, but they can be suggestions on topics that you're interested in. And then I'll use the deck that you had purchased in doing the reading. And I'm okay to do this because the channel's not monetized. So it's essentially a gift from you to me. And then I do a reading that everybody enjoys, and hopefully you like it too. So if you're interested in more about that, check out my description down below. But let's get into Saturn retrograde at 14 degrees Aries, a power degree. Hopefully it won't be an hour and a half long. So on June 27th, Saturn, which is the planet I just showed you in the introduction right here, is going to enter 14 degrees of Aries. You don't have to have this placement for this to be relevant to you because this shows up in all of our charts. And then on July 26th, 2026, so in a month, Saturn will turn retrograde at that degree, 14 degrees, 45 minutes. It moves quite slowly. For some people, that's fast. We did 2 videos about this in 2025 in October. This was for the full moon on October 6th, 2025. This is the first transit that we're going to look at now. But if you're not clear and want to learn more about this astrology and the historical pattern associated with 14 degrees Aries, then you can watch the 2 videos in the description for that. We go very slow, and one is an all sign. So there is a message for every single sign in it. I'm not talking about Saturn retrograde, but I am talking about these different transits. So if you want more details than I can fit into this video, watch those 2 videos. So for people who are really new, when we're looking at 14 degrees Aries, you don't have to be an Aries sun, moon, rising for it to be relevant. However, if you have sun, moon, or rising Aries, especially in the mid degrees, this is called the second decan. That just means 10 degrees to 20 degrees of Aries, then that's going to impact you more. Or if you have transits in the second decan, 10 to 20 degrees of Libra. Those are the 2 signs that are most impacted by this. And if you know how to check what house this is in, this is resonant for the house that is in. Okay, so let's look at the full moon on October 6, 2025, and see if we can see some patterns. So on October 6, 2025, we had a full moon in Aries. This happened at exactly the same degree, 14 degrees of Aries, where Saturn is turning retrograde in July. Some of the main themes of that full moon were autonomy and relationships, higher self-awareness, and this was specifically through mirroring and also conflict. In those readings, I stressed that there was an urgency to stand on business. This means stand up for yourself in situations and to give things time. So again, if you want to check out the 2 videos on this, I go into greater detail. Plus, there's a sign-by-sign message for every sign. So hopefully this will go into greater depth for you. But I want to bring out the Psychic Tarot to see what kind of situations we want to focus on from that time period. You want to think about October 6th, 2025. So we have the Hanged Man. Neptune was still in Pisces in October 2025. Neptune rules this card. And the Ace of Cups. Okay, I'm satisfied with these cards, so let's do some channeling. So right away, you may have experienced delays, particularly with regard to relationships. You may have wanted something to go forward, but you were stopped. Still, something new began for you. It may have not been clear to you then, but now you see. This may involve Pisces energy. The demand for your attention may have increased at that time. But with that came problems such as concentration, too many opinions, distractions. You may have come upon a person. This may have been love, or just an acquaintance. This person, there could be love bombing or demand for your attention. This person may have begun to cross boundaries with you, and they may have started taking on qualities of you, just like mirroring you. This may have felt somewhat scary. It was a feeling like you were around someone who wasn't safe. So whatever issue they had, you felt uncomfortable around. Still, I feel like there was lots of support and friendship. They were guiding you in a different direction, leading you to safety. The balance for that full moon was really between autonomy and relationships, right? So it was about figuring out where it was safe and where you should not go with people. Let me know if this resonates for October 6th, 2025. This is connected with the Mars-Mercury conjunctions, and we'll do a video on them as well. There was a series of conjunctions until April this year between Mars and Mercury, and this happened at the same time. And this was an alignment of your beliefs and the way that you actually act. And Mars and Mercury periodically align this way, allowing a way forward. And just remember, these readings take a lot of time. So I know many of you guys have followed me for years, and it's silly to comment, but it really helps the engagement. It shows the algorithm that you're interested, and it's a fair exchange of energy. I heard another reader talking about that, and it's just the best practice to show the people that are putting in effort to bring you this information some degree of reciprocity. So if you don't mind, leave a comment down below if this resonates. You can tell me what happened on October 6, 2025, that Saturn may be re-triggering for you in 2026. So the next transit I want to tell you guys about began on May 14th, 2022. This was Venus conjunct Chiron. And in my last video, we talked about Chiron having entered Taurus, but the conjunction happened in 14 degrees of Aries as well, right here in the chart. And what's special about this conjunction, this is the beginning of a planetary cycle, which is a relationship between these two planets. Venus goes around the chart like this over the period of about 10 months and rejoins Chiron. Now, what's special about this planetary cycle is that it happened 2 times, which is super rare, from the 14th degree. So we didn't have one planetary cycle from 22 to 23 at 14 degrees Aries. We had 2 planetary cycles from 14 degrees Aries until 2024. These planetary cycles are relationships between planets that produce outcomes. So some of the main themes that we experienced through that time were self-worth upgrades, identity healing, reclaiming autonomy, and the theme of art as medicine, okay? So if you want to know more about this, I went into great depth in those 2 previous videos about the 14th degree. So that's where you want to find out more. But let's get some messages around that 2-year time period. So what you want to do is look back from May 14th, 2022 to mid-spring 2024 and see if something to do with these themes came up for you. So instead of the Psychic Tarot, let's try the Braille. Let's see what kind of themes come up. So we have closing, difficult, generating birth, and direction. Wow, okay, that's powerful. So I'll just leave them like this so you guys can see them. And let's see what kind of messages come through. So right away, I get the literal translation that you were closing a difficult thing in your life between 2022 and 2024. This had to do with identity. This thing that you were closing, which was a relationship, a situation, a job that you were in, a direction you had studied, was reflective of an afflicted identity. By this, I mean that you chose that path because you were afflicted and it was limiting. So it could have been a job, it could have been a direction you had studied in college, but it kept on being not enough. You may have had even limitations put on you possibly by family, restrictions, and ultimatums. So it was some kind of a situation. If you were in a relationship, you were with someone who didn't see all of you. It was limiting and it made you unhappy. So the feeling of unhappiness is coming through. And I get it could have been a difficult time closing doors and putting a stop to something. It may have shown up in multiple things in your life, but you were fighting for yourself. That's the main energy that I think you should be looking for. And for everybody, it could be different. The artists among us likely turn to art almost immediately. Others may have turned to crafts, all sorts of different things. I feel like you experienced a lot of naysaying. So people telling you like, no, people not respecting you. And you looked around at all these people and you were like, you said this, the whole thing. So the people and the situations were not respecting you. And that 2-year period, 2024, led you to break away and close that direction. And this began something new, a new path, a new direction. This is the path you're on now. And this is the path that Saturn will trigger when it turns retrograde. If in these situations there were things that happened that are still not resolved, it is likely that this retrograde period will in some way address some part of it, dealing with the people, but also emotions and opinions about what happened to you, or maybe just the realization how bad it was. I get the fact that it was very, very difficult situation. And I get the lack of sympathy. Like, I get this feeling of really careless people, maybe a partner, maybe someone else. It might be someone at work, very, very careless and very like unsympathetic, no emotions, didn't care what happened to you, that kind of theme. That's what I would be looking for. And you kind of fighting for your right to protect yourself, reclaim your autonomy. Okay, so on March 11th, 2023, Jupiter and Chiron, that's the wounded healer we were talking about with Venus, created a planetary cycle. This cycle is different because it lasts 13 years until 2036. So just to remind you, a planetary cycle is the relationship between two planets that generates a specific pattern in our lives. The Jupiter-Chiron planetary cycle in Aries at 14 degrees has a lot to do with a massive overhaul of our self-concept. That's like self-esteem. So if your self-esteem has been battered by life, if you've been disrespected, if you have qualities that people don't respect, that are protected qualities, especially like if you're LGBTQA, if you're a particular religion, if you are a particular race or ethnicity, and you get treated poorly because of it, and that pushes you back in life or tries to push you back, this planetary cycle is very healing for that, to restore your fairness in your life. So Jupiter in this position, this is Jupiter, helps to find workarounds, not to convince the people who don't respect you to respect you, but to find another way. This cycle has a lot to do with finding healthy environments. This is the town you live in, school you go to, or religious groups you're in. So something's come up to do with gang stalking as the theme generally for people. And there's a couple experts online that are talking about gang stalking, and they're connecting it to religious groups. So I'm not trying to say that religious groups are a threat, but in certain cases there may be. So if you find yourself targeted by people in your religious community and they're gang stalking you, this cycle is very healing for that, to free you of the unwanted attention from a group of people targeting you. Now in this chart, I switched the chart over to March 2026. This is when Jupiter, right here in Cancer, was in a square to Chiron. That full moon we just talked about in October 2025, this square between Chiron and Jupiter, which is the opening square of their planetary cycle, the first time they're in a hard aspect. This is how the square looks. It's just a 90-degree separation from between the two planets. This began under that full moon and continued right into April. So the connection between Mercury and Mars, so those multiple conjunctions between Mercury and Mars, a series of full moons and new moons from October to April this year, and the square between Jupiter and Chiron all happened through this time, which means that all these astrological events are connecting, they're creating change. And if you're new to astrology, so you understand, the square lasting so many months back and forth is rare, okay? So they just held each other at a square. So you may have had things come up in your life between that time that were transformational. They were transformational. There may have been tension. It would have had a lot to do with you standing up for yourself, defending yourself, switching direction. You may have experienced proximity to high control groups. That's this gang stalking that I mentioned just a little bit ago. You may have pushed away or pushed back on things you were experiencing, and you may have sought places to be yourself. And this is because of that Jupiter-Chiron square in their planetary cycle that began at 14 degrees of Aries, okay? So tension would have come up where you had to fight for yourself, but this was in a larger pattern of emancipation, freeing yourself from the overbearing power from other people. So the last transit I want to talk to you guys about happened from April to May 2026. This is Lilith. She represents the moon's furthest position from the Earth. It's a somewhat problematic transit. She was in 14 degrees of Sagittarius from April to May 2026, the last week of April, third week. And Mars was in Aries at 15 degrees. So they were in a trine. Here it is in the chart. There's Lilith right here, and here's Mars in your chart, okay? Under this transit, you may have experienced backstabbing or potential seediness, strange people, strange situations, kind of like a Twilight Zone feeling, like you're in a different place than you should be, you're out too late, feeling uncomfortable. This is all from previous work that we did, specifically in the 2 videos I mentioned. So the advice at that time was to delay responses and don't react too fast. So between April and May this year, it's not long ago, so it's easy to remember, did something happen? Was there tension? Was there conflict? This transit is really important because it shows the intensity of the energy that you're dealing with. So it's like the darkest side of 14 degrees Aries. You know how we were talking about Jupiter and Venus and all of these different transits healing certain aspects of ourselves? This transit would have shown you exactly what you need to heal, exactly the kind of energies you're up against. I'll do a quick little brow tele to give you guys some insight on that. We have praying, number 72. We have transformation, 111. I know you guys like 111. Hoping that a relationship will change, mission of the soul. So it became very personal, beyond just desire, but more of like an intense, something was really pulling you in that direction. There was something returning into your life. Weak, you may have felt weak or underpowered for that situation. This does not mean that you're weak in this situation. This transit was meant to be shocking. It was meant to be difficult. It was meant to touch upon the themes that you need to address, but it's like the worst side of it, right? So it's showing you the worst side, so you pay attention. End of April, third week of April to the beginning of May. And then generating birth. We're getting this card again. Something new coming out of this. This is productive. Okay, so I wanted to walk you through all of the transits together and then bring your attention to Saturn retrograde itself. This isn't the comprehensive video for Saturn retrograde. but it helps you to understand how to look at these historical patterns and see how they flow into the future. So now we're going to take a look at Saturn retrograde that begins on July 26, 2026, but only in terms of these top level themes that should be coming up. And since Saturn is moving into the 14th degree in 2 days, you should be already seeing or looking for these themes in your life. And again, if you want to share in the comments, by all means go ahead. So major theme that I got was boundary violation, belief or ideology check-in. That includes those religious communities that some people are a part of. So if the community is hurting you and you're in a religious community, that's not safe. That's not where you need to be. That's what I'm talking about, not religion in general. And that core theme, remember from the full moon, social distraction versus duty and responsibility towards others. Because you can't have like all of one and none of the other. You have to find balance between finding space for duty while limiting social distraction. And like we were talking about the Venus conjunction to Chiron, that was what we just talked about, 2022 to 2024. And very important, Lilith trine Mars at this degree. That was this year. That was April to May. And Jupiter square Chiron. And that was October 2025 to April 2026, and the full moon in October 2025. Okay, so that was the catalyst, that was the big event that you want to look back to. Under Saturn retrograde, my guess, your big theme, I deserve more. So I deserve more type statements should be your theme for Saturn retrograde. Another thing that I'll foreshadow, Mercury is just about to go retrograde in Cancer in July. The degree at which it finishes its retrograde is 14 degrees of Cancer, and that is a square to the Aries degree, that 14 degrees of Aries. So this tells us that much of Mercury retrograde is synchronistic to Saturn retrograde, and it's going to even push it further. Expect shocking communications, revelations, but this is all for truth. Okay, so don't be scared. We'll talk about Mercury retrograde finishing on 14 degrees of Cancer in a dedicated video. So now let's do a reading about Saturn retrograde to see if we get any more information about what that transit is all about. Okay, so we're going to look at other themes for Saturn retrograde in the context of the astrology. Let's pick 6 cards to see the general energy. We have the Queen of Cups, Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio transits, especially. I'm guessing this Mercury retrograde is going to have a huge impact on Saturn retrograde. I think it's going to have like shocking, unexpected revelations. And yeah, I just double checked, and the planetary cycle, this is when they conjoin and begin a year-long transit around the zodiac, happened in the last Mars and Mercury conjunction in April 19th with Saturn. That was a syzygy. That means 3 planets were aligned. So my guess that Mercury-Mars conjunctions through the winter time, there were 6, that full moon, and this final conjunction that corresponds to the planetary cycle that Mercury and Saturn are in is directly connected to that square that we're going to get at the end of Mercury retrograde. This is June 10th, 2026, and this was the first time that Mercury and Saturn squared, although Saturn was still at the 13th degree. But if you're wondering what that square between Saturn and Mercury will be at the end of Mercury retrograde, so this one right here, okay? If you're wondering, it's on July 23rd, 2026. Look back to June 10th, 2026, and their conjunction in April 19th with Mars. It's all connected. And since Mars is in the mix and this alignment between Mercury and Mars just happened, it's likely that it's explosive, intense, transformative, I need to do a video on Mercury and Mars conjunctions. I've mentioned this before, but it's very important to realize that the conjunction of Mercury and Mars happens periodically, and sometimes they join once, but many times they'll join multiple times. They travel together every few years. This is a reset between our communications, the things we say, and our lived experience. So as we live over a 2-year period, our words and actions sometimes drift apart. This is normal human behavior. When Mars and Mercury align, it brings those two things together so that our actions and words align and we can focus direction. So that's why it's so important that Saturn, Mars, and Mercury began a planetary cycle earlier this year in that same area. It was at 7 degrees of Aries, I believe. So Mars and Saturn are also in a planetary cycle now as well. With astrology, there's so many different rabbit holes, but I'll tell you this last little bit. July 23rd, 2026, that's when Mercury squares Saturn and turns direct after its retrograde. So that communication reset ends. Look, Mars is in a sextile with Saturn. So they're all interacting together to bring about some kind of transformation, some kind of initiation. You're pushing forward. It's kind of some kind of reset to do with the transits in the past. You're getting in touch with your emotions because Mercury was retrograde in Cancer. That's what I think this is. I think this is you, regardless if you're a man or a woman. Very cool stuff. So very emotional, very intense. 2 of spades, 2 of swords. And then we have the Fool. There's a message that comes up with this that I saw recently, that you have to be comfortable with the unknown. And this is a theme right now, that not everything is going to have a guaranteed ending. Not everything's going to have like a declared confirmation. To be successful under Saturn retrograde right now, you have to be okay with holding space for the unknown and unconfirmed. That doesn't mean things are not going to work out. It just means that new beginnings happen in unexpected ways, and you're not going to be debriefed, or not everything's going to be clarified. Let's look more. We have Queen of Clubs, Virgo, Taurus, Capricorn. A lot to do with communication, right? 2 queens together. Then we have the 7 of Cups, which is Scorpio, Venus, right? 7 of hearts in this deck. So, and there's a snake. Snakes have been coming up as an issue. It just means that there are people with ulterior motives around. And I get the feeling that sometimes they're your friends. So don't become paranoid of the people around you. But if something seems out of order, like someone's getting close with you, even though you don't know them very well, or there's some other proximity, I think is a great tell. Like if someone is feigning proximity and you're like, wait, is this love bombing? Like, what's going on? Or if a friend is suddenly super interested in finding things out, it doesn't mean they're doing something. It just means you need caution. I feel like could be also gatekeeping going on. Someone not inviting you to kind of keep you out of the loop. Those are some of the dynamics that Saturn retrograde is going to throw our way. And that's the things that you're not supposed to accept, right? This is you saying, aha, I see the snake. I see this makes me feel funny. I'm going to be careful here. New beginning, right? Resistance. Pay attention to resistance. And then we have 3 of diamonds, 3 of pentacles. So new beginnings in work. This could also be favorable though. So the other thing that I'm getting is that someone could have deeper care for you. Venus in Scorpio is very loving as well. So this person could have deeper love for you. They could feel compassion or compelled to help, and they could help you generate a new beginning. But the feeling here is different, right? So if it's contempt, if it's gatekeeping, if it's paranoia towards you, you'll feel it right away. But if someone feels love and compassion and wants to help you, maybe they see you in a bind, then it's going to feel very open. Okay, so we have Psychic Tarot for, I think it's not for the heart, but here's the heart chakra. I was going to say for the heart, and then this card came up. So this Saturn retrograde is deeply rooted in emotions. It's triggered by Mercury right before it begins. It aligns. Something is said that gets the ball rolling. Remember, our date was July 23rd, 2026. You want to write that down. That's 3 days before Saturn turns retrograde. I will not be surprised if information doesn't come in for you then. And with Mercury retrograde having just finished, we've done the reset, right? We've done the reset, the emotional reset. We are more aligned with what we want to say. And Mars is in a sextile to Saturn as well. And those three planets, Saturn, Mars, and Mercury, formed a syzygy at 7 degrees Aries earlier this year. That all of these, they're both planetary cycles, like Saturn and Mars, Mars and Mercury and Saturn. 3 planetary cycles are developing underway. If that's too complicated, don't worry about it. But let me know in the comments. Maybe I can write a Substack article for you guys about it, something like that. So let's see the next message. We have accelerated motion. That's Mercury in Sagittarius. This reminds me of Lilith in Sagittarius, right? Forming those trines. So there's dust that was kicked up probably in early spring. What were the dates for Lilith? Late April to May. But it's a healing energy. It's getting you on the right path. There could have been people that were standing in your way, but this is about overcoming and aligning. It almost feels like you're on that path now anyway, and this just kind of solidifies the path you're on. But yeah, Saturn retrograde is getting triggered by Mars and Mercury. Very powerful synchronicity. Then we have the sun. Very beautiful. Yeah, I feel very good about where this is going. I do think there's going to be some discomfort. I won't be surprised if some of you, if a snake is revealed around you, like someone dishonest, maybe someone from the same gender as you. There we have 3 of, so it could be like disappointing. Then we have 3 of swords. So with this reading style, the nice thing about it is that we can clarify almost right away. So I have the Crow Tarot. Let's see what the heartache is about. Sun in Virgo, 8 of Pentacles. Queen of Cups, she shows up. There could be a Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio deeply involved in all of this. They could be the snake who's messing around. Remember, these types of transits, the issue came up of protection magic and that kind of thing. And if you want to do protection magic, go right ahead. These readings are warded, which means that if people come here with bad intentions, there's protection against that. But in general, like frequency wars or fighting with magic and those kinds of things, I have a unique, or maybe I have like a cautionary opinion of that. If someone, and I am getting the feeling that someone's messing around, Queen of Cups energy, this could be a man or a woman, but like a gossipy, hurt feelings, right? But when they say hurt people, hurt feelings sometimes end up hurting feelings. Someone's trying to be hurtful, but this is getting worked out. And if someone's working against you, especially if they're using a lot of energy to do that, those kinds of situations corrupt the person who's initiating the energy. So if you want to practice protection magic, by all means, go ahead. If it makes you feel safe, or if that's your practice, if that's your belief system, by all means. But I kind of feel when you're around certain types of people, like you're going in a good direction anyway. So it's like somebody spinning their wheels and they're polluting their own life by being like that, right? Then we have the World. Yeah, I just feel like good things are coming your way, regardless. And then we have the Empress. I think it's like something to do with envy or like coveting something that someone is. Someone expresses like good energy and someone doesn't have enough self-esteem to see that level of energy within themselves. So they want to tear the other person down. They're envious of that other person's self-satisfaction, right? They have their own journey to be on, to figure out, but definitely acted upon malice, contempt, envy, to me, those are like very bad emotions. And I feel I don't sympathize in the sense that like, oh, poor evil person who's trying to cause harm, but it's kind of pathetic. That's how I see that energy, right? So yes, someone might try to get at your heart to give you problems or to hurt you in some way or undermine you. I wouldn't say hurt you, undermine you in competition but I think that you're being removed from that person's reach, and that person's gonna end up where they belong, right? 7 of coins, this is long term. Eye on the prize. One of the major themes of the astrology was stop looking at the distractions and focus on the path ahead. Other people can be extremely helpful in life, but they can also be incredibly distracting. You have the Magician card. I strongly feel that this Saturn retrograde has a lot to do with you claiming your power. You're in a great opportunity to create, to manifest, to bring something out. Look, these are the best cards you can get, the Magician and the Sun. So you're making something great. You're on the path of something. And I think the challenge of this Saturn retrograde in Aries, which has to do with our self-esteem, at a time when Chiron's just exited Aries. You see, Chiron was in Aries for 8 years. That was dealing with self-esteem issues, things like that. It's exited Aries, and now Saturn's here. So it's like, what did you actually learn about self-esteem? Do you love yourself more? Are you willing to fight for yourself? Are you going to let people walk all over you and project onto you? The other thing that comes to mind about these types of situations, that when someone's going through something and they're acting up, like being harmful or trying to tear you down, whatever, don't be so complicit to their storyline. They have whatever issue they have going on inside of their head, and they're projecting that onto you. And the thing is that if you engage with that energy, you're doing them a favor. Now, if you want to volunteer, go right ahead. But these aren't comfortable volunteering things. You don't want to enable someone who's trying to hurt you. That's what I mean. And so be very careful of becoming a secondary character in a villain's story, in a villain's narrative. I'm really happy with this spread so far. Let's just pick some brow tele to finish up. But I love the Magician and the Light. Positive career progress. It's all about focus on yourself, get in touch with love for yourself. All these lessons that we talked about today should be your motivators. Let's see the brow tele cards. We have, look, the Star, Pure Intentions, Aquarius. I always associate the Magician with Mercury also. And so we talked about Mercury and how Mars and Mercury are connected. And I think that they're connected with Saturn in that massive 3-way planetary cycle we're under. The main part of that cycle is the next 10 months or 11 months till Mercury and Saturn join again. And then the 3 of them are in a 3-way planetary cycle right now for the next 11 months. And then Mars and Saturn will have even a longer cycle from that position that will last 2 years. So we have Pure Intentions, the Star, Something's Faded. Then we have Home, Energy, number 99. Well, this is telling me that in certain cases, this Queen of Cups is your benefactor. She's helping you. Then we have Soul, Caring and Nurturing. So I think for some people, it's really about help. But for other people, it's about the other energies I picked up on. Then we have Generating Birth. Look at our favorite card. Definitely a sign that new things are beginning. Initiating a long-term path. 7 of Pentacles. Saving for the future. Closing. We saw that card before as well. 67. And Goodness. Whatever it is, whatever you're going through, you're very well aligned for a great outcome for the Saturn retrograde. This is almost like some kind of gift for the good work you've done under all the other transits we talked about. Anyway, I know this video got long again, and I hope that some of you are enjoying it. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to make the energy real. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to check out my Tarot Talk videos, which is just tarot, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you. Bye.